Hello, you are listening to A Woman's Guide, episode 23. Are you in an emotional slump of some kind? Are you emotionally and physically fatigued and exhausted? What can you do to treat these issues and prevent them from happening in the future? Today's episode is dealing with emotional slumps, fatigue, and exhaustion. Part 2. Stay tuned. This is a woman's guide to reclaiming wholeness after sexual abuse. For all of you listening, welcome to the show. I am Simone, your confidant and guide. Thank you for tuning in. So this episode is going to be part 2 to the first episode that I had. And it's going to be giving you some tips and some ways to help with emotional fatigue and compassion fatigue. So if you happen to be watching this video first, before the first one, I suggest that you go back to that one so you can get some information that I spoke to you about, and most likely it will help you to better understand what it is that I'm going to be speaking about here in this episode. Okay? It's just, I mean, it's just better to listen to part 1 and then part 2 so you can get the full scope of what it is that I'm saying. So, if you did, do you remember what an emotional slump is? Or emotional fatigue, or compassion fatigue and exhaustion? Do you remember what those are? Well, if you don't, then I say go back to the first episode, right? Or go to part 1 of this episode. But anyway, there's only one main cause for these issues. Okay? Or causes, depending on how you look at it. But there's only one main cause for these issues. And that is you are operating on an emotional, a mental, or physical deficit. But I would say mostly an emotional deficit, a mental deficit as well, because they're both intertwined, they're both together, right? So your emotional self, and I don't know if I said this in the last episode, but I said your emotional self needs recharging. It needs recharging. It needs nurturing. And your mental state needs recharging. It needs nurturing. Just like your physical body does. It needs nurturing and it needs recharging. So lots of self-care is needed. This is really what it is in a nutshell. You need to have better self-care. More self-care. Better self-care. More adequate self-care. And of course, I'm going to be getting into how you can do that, or how you can give yourself more self-care. So, this is just a quick review, very, very quick brief, just so we can get you warmed up again. There has been too much energy extended outwardly, emotionally, mentally, physically. There's been too much energy extended, whether it's to other people, which is where it's coming from, the compassion fatigue, or just regular experiences of any kind, difficulties and circumstances where there's not enough energy drawn back in to you and replenished. So that's ultimately where this emotional fatigue, compassion fatigue, emotional slumps are coming from. When you draw more energy to yourself, that is what's going to help with these issues. And that is what these issues are telling you. They're telling you something. It is a warning from you, your physical self, your emotional self, your mental self, your soul, your higher self, yourself, okay? Let's just say yourself. It's a warning from yourself that you are out of balance. You are out of balance. You're totally out of balance. Something is totally out of balance. It's tipping over. It's at the tipping point. It's just, And if it continues and it goes on far enough, you will completely erode and deteriorate. Of course you will. If it gets to that point where it's gone too far, you're just going to eventually completely erode emotionally, mentally, and physically, of course, because the physical body follows the mind and the emotions. You're going to completely erode and deteriorate. And of course, your spiritual self is going to suffer too, because your spiritual self operates through your physical body and your emotional and mental states. So you're just going to completely erode. So that's why these issues happen. It's really a warning sign to you, to your understanding that you need to take better self-care, better nurturing. You need to take more energy and draw it back into you so that you are not experiencing these things. So be grateful for this. I know it sounds weird, right? But be grateful for these issues and these happenings, because it's just a signal of what it's bringing to your attention. It's bringing it to your attention. It's giving you a signal that you need to be brought back into a balance. Something needs to be adjusted. Something needs to be integrated. Something needs to be replenished, okay? So whenever we're having an emotional slump, whether it's emotional fatigue of some kind or of an exhaustion of some kind, it's really a time where we're just not feeling our best. And no matter how it manifests, the fatigue, the exhaustion, the depression, the grief, it's just a call for more attention and self-care. So basically, I'm saying with all of this, for the first 5 minutes or however long I've been speaking, emotional slumps, emotional fatigue, compassion fatigue, exhaustion on some level is just, and it's a signal for you to be more attentive to your self-care, to give yourself more self-care. That's all it is. That's it. That's all it is. And like I said, I think I said on some level in the last episode that we do have cycles where we have downtime, and we have times where we have high time and we have downtime. It's the same principle. It's the same principle because you have extended so much energy naturally. Let's just say you're not self-sacrificing, or you're not codependent, or you're not exerting so much of yourself emotionally, physically, mentally, too much. Okay, let's say that you are able to have a better balance within your life. Okay, you're able to have a balance, and you're not doing too much of one thing, and that's what causes you to have an emotional slump or fatigue. Let's just say you're balanced. Regardless, when you have a slump, it's just because you need to bring yourself back, or you need to have some downtime in order to replenish your energy reserves, emotional reserves, or mental wellness. It's a time for reflection and contemplation, and just healing your body, healing your mind, healing your energy. Okay, so regardless, it's the same principle. It's just a call for more self-care. So you have high time, but you also have low time. And the low time serves a purpose for more self-care. That way you can be ready and prepared and energized to go back into that next cycle where you're going to be extending a lot more energy. So I hope you understand what I'm saying with that. So anyway, emotional and compassion fatigue specifically, there are things that you can do to practice to get yourself into tip-top shape. Or just not practice, or just things you can do to get yourself back into tip-top shape, or at least better shape. Most likely if you've been unbalanced and you've been overextending yourself. Okay? So the first point is, and this is what I really want you to do, because this is really, I think, what we miss a lot, is that you need to identify what can be draining or further draining to your energy and to your emotions. Okay? And I know I said in the last episode that it occurs, emotional fatigue occurs when it's a result of accumulation of the things that we've suffered and battled and overcome, and how we're extending and how we had to spend so much energy, and emotional time. And of course that is true, but what I'm saying is, it's to identify those things or people or activities or behaviors that are sending you over the edge, that is making you worse, that is making you more drained and more less able to bounce back and build yourself back. Identify those things that are further draining your energy, your emotional reserves, and your mental, your mental attention. It's just overly, it is doing too much to take more out of you. Find the thing that breaks, saying, the straw that breaks the camel's back, the last straw that breaks the camel's back, something like that. I'm sorry, I can't really remember exactly what it is. It's find that thing that really just sends you over the edge and really crashes you, okay? It could be anything. I mean, it really can be anything. It's just anything that sends you over the edge, that causes you to just deplete your last piece of energy, or deplete what you have left, or totally obstruct your ability to build yourself back up and get yourself propped back up and get yourself back on track. Figure out what that is. So the things, the people that you have control over, where you just have a say as to how much it affects you and what happens in your life. So for example, working extra hours at work. If it's work, that's where you're becoming depleted. Working extra hours at work. Maybe you should cut down the hours you're working. Perhaps. That's one reason. That's that's one way that you can take certain things that are draining you a little bit more, because emotionally you are expending yourself at work too. And it's depending on the people that you're working with, depending on the problems that you're experiencing. And this can go right into compassion fatigue as well. But depending on what you're doing, most often than not, if you are going to work and you're working extra hours, you're extending more energy. You're expending more energy. You're giving more of your emotional self. And especially if the work is terribly stressful, well, stress is emotional ruin, basically. So if your job is very stressful, that's emotionally going to drain you out as well. So possibly you might want to cut down on your working hours, or quit doing those extra hours or that overtime. Toxic relationships, of course, that's a big one. I mean, geez, if you're going to have toxic relationships, that is for sure going to drain your energy. For sure going to drain your energy. People who, and this can go right into self-sacrificing and codependency, because codependent relationships most often are toxic relationships. And if you haven't watched that video, I would suggest you go and watch that video so you can get the whole backstory about that. But toxic relationships can definitely have it can be emotionally taxing on you. And I've had a relationship with that. If you watched that episode of me speaking about self-sacrifice and codependency, I did explain that I had a friend who I was codependent with, and it was extremely draining. It was extremely draining for me emotionally. It was so emotionally draining, taxing, because that person, especially if you're in a relationship with a person who's always in a state of chaos, and they're always in a state of drama, and they create drama for themselves, and there's always a problem, and there's always an issue, and they're always angry, and they're always depressed, and they need. Oh yeah, that's definitely gonna bankrupt you emotionally. That's gonna bankrupt your emotional reserves. That's going to burn you out, especially if you're an empathetic person, you're compassionate, you don't know how to say no, and you're just basically allowing that person to dump their stuff all over you. That is going to wear you out emotionally. Toxic relationships can send you over the edge. And I know specifically for me, because I was this time where I was just started to be friends with this person. It's a friendship. It wasn't a romantic thing. It's a friendship with this person. When I started becoming friends with this person, I was already dealing with my own stuff. I had a whole bunch of other stuff going on. I was dealing with unemployment, dealing with jobs, and dealing with family issues, dealing with crisis within myself, going to therapy, dealing with, the sexual abuse and, bringing that out to my family, and that destroyed my family dynamic and other people and other relatives, and it did everything. So I was emotionally worn out and stressed out, and trying to heal, trying to deal, trying to, make my way in society, not knowing who I am, not having enough money, being unemployed, dealing with all the other issues that come from all of that. Okay, and then on top of that, I had a relationship with someone who was toxic, and they had their own set of problems and all of their chaos and all their crises, and they wanted me to help them and save them and carry them and do for them. My gosh, it was just ridiculous. It was compounded, and no wonder I was so I was so out of balance at that time, because I had too much on my plate. I had too much on my plate. I had way too much on my plate. And of course, there's a lot more smaller, more specific issues that I was dealing with, but I can't remember them all now. But I had so many issues I was dealing with at that time. So what I'm saying about with toxic relationships is watch out for that, because that is a straw that can break the camel's back. Because that's bringing a whole bunch of other unnecessary stuff that you really don't need to deal with. And you need to have enough emotional energy for yourself. If you're always giving it away, and because of all the things you've gone through and all the things you dealt with and all the things you've overcome, and you get to the point where, other people are wanting your energy because they don't want to expend their own energy, and they want to be carried, and they want to be, you know what I'm saying? They want to be carried, they want to be taken care of 24/7. Oh my goodness. That is going to ruin you. Emotionally and mentally and physically. And that was the main reason why I stopped with that relationship. I just stopped because I said, I can't do this. I'm so depleted, emotionally depleted and drained. I'm so fatigued emotionally and compassionately too. This is the same thing. Like I said, emotional fatigue and compassion is the same thing. It's just specified to the fact that your emotional reserves are being burnt out because you are experiencing secondary traumatization from someone else. Okay? Or is it vicarious traumatization? Whatever. What are the two? Okay? So that is a big thing. That is a big thing with toxic relationships. You can definitely find yourself in a situation where you're completely depleted, because everything that you had, you gave it away. And you're continually giving it away to other people that really need to care for themselves and take care of themselves. Plus dealing with all your other issues. It's too much. It's too much. Also, little things like watching the news. Watching the news drains the heck out of me. I can't deal with it. I just can't watch news for too long because I just call it bad news. It's just bad news. Why don't they just call it bad news? Very rarely do I hear anything good. It's just someone got shot, someone got raped. This political party did this, and, so-and-so did this, and what's going on over the other side of the world, and what's happening in South Africa, and what's happening here, and what's happening there. It's like there's nothing positive, and it can really depress you, and it can really drain you out, especially if you're a person who's extremely empathetic, and it's like you can almost feel the suffering that other people are experiencing, even though you're not around them. Oh yeah, that can really, really drain you out. Can really deplete your energy. It can really, really deplete your energy. Things like gossip and slander. You know, if you have friends that are gossiping and slandering each other, that can wear you out. Well, let me speak for myself. That wears me out. I don't like that stuff. That can really drain my energy by speaking negatively about other people, and the fact that it's like, you know, it's just all of this negativity and pessimism. Negativity and pessimism has a lot to do with being emotionally drained too. Okay? So anyway, the next point is give yourself space and time to recharge. You have to do that. Remember I told you about self-care, nurturing self-care? You need to find time regularly. This is not a one-time thing. You should be regularly finding time to be alone. Space and time to feel alone, to be alone, to recharge, to get back in touch with you, to reflect, to be, you know, to give back to you, to nurture you. You know, that's what you need to do. Give yourself the space and time to recharge. And I mean alone. Be alone. This is not for other people, it's for you. You need to do this for yourself. And most likely you're needing this time because you've been extending too much of yourself to other people. So get yourself a space and time to recharge for yourself. The next point is engage in activities that are uplifting and fueling. Engage in activities that are uplifting and fueling. If you're going to engage in something, make sure that it's bringing something to you. It's bringing joy to you. It's bringing inspiration to you. It's bringing encouraging energy, uplifting energies to you. It's building you up. It's fueling you. So what I'm saying is resist those things that further drain or deplete your energy. Resist those things that are fueling. Resist those things that are further draining or depleting your energy. Okay, so just like I said, it's a small example with watching the news. I mean, that's a small thing, but that it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference when you just do things that are for you to have a better sense of well-being and a better emotional, be in a better state emotionally. So those activities, let's say like meditation. I always say meditation, sorry. Exercise. Watching something that is encouraging, watching something that is uplifting, like some kind of motivational speech or something encouraging, something that tells you and affirms the good within your life or brings something positive to your mind. It's really just about making your mind positive and bringing different energies into your mind and to your space. Something that's feeding you. You know, if you enjoy sports, do sports because you're getting your physical body, physical body in a state where, you're releasing endorphins and you perhaps really, really like that sport and it's bringing something good to you, It makes you it causes you to maybe feel free, causes you to feel stronger, causes you to feel more, I don't know, anything. Art, healing arts, there's something called the healing arts, Art in itself is healing, for sure. Painting and drawing or doing crafts or cooking even. Cooking is a good thing too. You can cook if you like to cook, if you like to make little desserts or little things like that gives you really a lot of joy and it brings some energy to you. Yeah, it's just really about bringing that energy of joy and happiness and upliftment to you. And something that gives you energy, anything that gives you energy. What about your passions? What about the things that it is that you really, really love to do, the things that you can do for hours and hours on end? Do that thing that you really have a passion for. that really feeds you, makes you feel good. That makes all the world of difference. Okay? The next point is to create balance with healthy routines and schedules. Creating balance is the name of the game here. Self-care and creating balance. Creating balance by incorporating more self-care. That really is what it is. So what that means is you have to create a balance between rest, sleep, work, relationships. You create a balance between those, especially those things that are depleting and draining you and causing you to feel worried, more anxious, more stressed, where you feel more restricted, you feel more burdened. You're trying to create a balance because most likely you're burdened, you're anxious, you're worried because you have too much of one thing. When you have too much of one thing, you can't be balanced. That's not balance. Okay? If you have 80-20, if you have 80% work and 20% free time, rest, fun things, family time, you're not going to be a very happy individual. You're not. Because that's too low. That's such a small percentage. It's a very small percentage. So if you have more sleep, just incorporating more sleep into your schedule, balancing work, balancing how you do work, balancing how much time you spend at work and then how much time you spend at work at home. Let's say if you have your own business, give yourself a certain time to be working on that, but do not spend all of your time doing work and then you're neglecting other things in your life that balance you and make you happy and create more of a, just more of a balanced life. Same with relationships. If you're dealing with if you have too much relationship focus, you're focusing too much on relationships, you're sacrificing yourself, you're codependent, and you're doing too much for other people, you're doing too much for them, even though they should be doing more for themselves. If you're putting too much of your energy in that and not enough into you, and not enough into your sleep, and not enough into your physical wellness, your exercise, your meditation, the things that you do physically for yourself, all of these things are what, the imbalance of these things are what creates us to be in this emotionally, physically, emotionally fatigued and exhausting state. That's what causes this. It's an imbalance. More self-care. Remember what I said? More self-care and balance. Self-care and balance. Make time for adequate sleep. Make time for adequate sleep. Make sure you're sleeping enough. Make sure you're sleeping enough. Sleep enough, because sleep, establish the best sleep-wake cycle for you. Because when you don't sleep enough, your emotional state is going to be out of whack. And I think I spoke about this in one of my other episodes with neglecting sleep. And if you don't, maybe you should watch that too. When you neglect sleep, you are preventing yourself from reaching your best, from being your best self and being emotionally balanced and well. When you do not sleep as much, when you get inadequate sleep and it goes on for a long time, you find that you're more miserable, you're off kilter, you're not so focused, you think the worst, you have more pessimism, and even studies show that depression really comes out of neglecting sleep. Or not just neglecting sleep, just not having enough sleep, period. Whether you do it intentionally or unintentionally. When you don't get enough sleep, you're more stressed. When you're more stressed, you're more emotionally taxed. When you're more emotionally taxed, you become depressed. So, adequate sleep, better sleep. Establish the best wake cycle. Because sometimes it really depends on what time we go to bed. If we go to bed earlier and we wake up earlier, or yes, we go to bed early and we wake up early, it's, and we find that sweet spot of, how we want to sleep, and when we go to bed and wake up, it makes all the difference in the world. It really has a lot to do with your emotional wellness and mental wellness. You need sleep, so make sure you sleep. Anyway, so that's for emotional fatigue. Compassion fatigue, we're going to extend this a little bit more because it's all of the same points. It's all of the above points because it really is the same thing. It's the same thing. Emotional fatigue is compassion fatigue. But compassion fatigue is more with the people that you're caring for or in the midst of that are creating this emotional fatigue for you. So it's all of the above points. I'm going to provide extra points to look into as we are experiencing stress and depletion and trauma as a result of, like I'm saying, with the interaction with others. So anyway, the first point is, if you are someone who is in a professional caring profession, okay? I said that already. If you are someone who is in more of a caretaking profession, so you're someone who directly cares for people emotionally, mentally, and physically, for the needs of other people, okay? So like I said, paramedic, doctor, nurse, therapist, counselor, whatever, all those other things where you're caring for people directly and you're seeing the distress and you're seeing the trauma and you're in a position where you have to help them. It's, of course, it's very, very rare that you're not going to become compassionately fatigued at some point. But there's some things you can do to kind of cope with that or manage that or, lessen the chance of you going through that or just reversing what it is, however you're feeling right now. So the first point is reduce your workload. Reduce your workload. Reduce the time that you spend at work. Reduce your work hours. If you can, I would say you should. And then possibly you can make up for your work hours somehow, some other kind of way. If it's really about, income, you can find your work hours some other kind of way. But what I'm saying is, overall, do not overextend yourself. Do not overdo it. Physically and emotionally, don't overdo it. It's very important that you don't do too much, because sometimes we overdo it. Sometimes we do more than what is expected. We do more than what we should. We do more than what the average Joe does, because maybe we feel like we're Superman. If you have those tendencies to be self-sacrificing, you feel like you're Superman. You feel like you can save everybody and do everything and help everyone, and it's killing you. And other people can pull their weight. You don't have to be doing everything. Reduce your work hours. Reduce the time you're spending. Perhaps maybe you could even possibly, if you are directly dealing with people who are in distress and trauma, and that's what's causing that compassion fatigue, maybe you can kind of adjust your work position so you're not directly dealing with people and they're suffering so much. That's not going to be easy. That's not really going to be necessarily easy, or possibly completely impossible. If you are a nurse or a doctor, you have to directly deal with the needs of individuals, right? Possibly that could mean a career change. If it's really that bad, and if you really find that you are always burnt out, you're always anxious, you're always worried, you're always stressed, you just feel completely burnt out and drained emotionally and mentally, maybe you might need to change your profession, or at least the way that you approach it. If you still like it, if it's your passion, but the fact that the other people are in distress and you identify so much with it, perhaps you need to spend less time. Maybe you may want to do that something as a once in a while type of thing. Perhaps if you still want to do it, maybe do it once in a while, or do it as a volunteer, or do it as something where you get to have more You put yourself in a place where you can have more flexibility with it, or change your career, or change the parameters of how you do that job, or how you do that profession, or find different ways. You can find different ways. There's different things that you can do where you can make it easier on yourself, and you can make it healthier for yourself. I don't know. I'm just trying to come up with different ways, but yeah, I tried. Anyway, what I'm saying is the next part of this point is just maintain a healthy balance between work and outside interests. If you're staying in that job, that profession, you say, no, well, that is what I want to do. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm meant to do. Maybe you might want to spend more time doing things on the outside that are happy and joyous and can balance out the stress of work. So spend more time with the outside interests. So if you like playing golf, play golf. Or if you like swimming, swim. Or, hang out more with friends. Or do something where you're spending more time in your outside interests. So it can kind of balance out that stress, balance out those things that you're going through at work. Take more time away. That's another piece. Take more time away. More vacations. Take more vacations. Take more time away. So ultimately what I'm saying is balance. It's really about balance. The whole lesson for this is just about balance. Learn to say no when you have to. Sometimes we have a problem saying no. Maybe you just need to say no. Maybe you need to say, well, I can't take that shift, or I don't think I can do that. I need to take time off for myself. No, I'm not going to do that. No, next Thursday I'll do that, or next Friday I'll do that. Setting boundaries, just, some people, I guess in a professional situation, I guess because you're the go-to person, other people just dump more responsibilities on you. But maybe you have to set more boundaries and tell people, I don't think I'm going to do that, and I don't want you to come to me about that because so-and-so and so-and-so, blah, 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 blah. You explain what it is that you want and what you are not going to do and what you're not going to tolerate. So it's really just about creating balance for yourself. That's professionally. Now, for other people in your life, your personal relationship, all of the same thing applies. I mean, if, for example, if you are caring for someone in your personal life, but it's still like you're caretaking, all of these points can still apply if you are personally caretaking for someone. So you can understand, and another point is, you can understand and be empathetic and compassionate to people. This is just how you might do it in your own mind, okay? This is not just the physical, but this is more about how you are seeing things and how you are responding to things. So the thing is with compassion fatigue is that you're empathetic to the point where it's become so a part of you that you become traumatized. And I know it's really, really hard to do that, especially if you're around people all the time, frequently, people who you love, people who you care about, and you're just a naturally empathetic person. It's really hard to make that line of separation between you and me. But you can be compassionate and empathetic without over-identifying. That's what I'm saying. Over-identifying. So it's like you just mentally putting yourself into space where saying, okay, well, this is their suffering, and I can care for them without putting myself in a place where I'm just so intertwined with them in their pain and their trauma that I lose all sense of myself. So it's really about you making that emotional distinction within yourself, in mentally understanding that you and that person are different, and you're just drawing that line in your mind. It's a mental thing that you're doing. So you do that by over-identifying You do that so you don't over-identify with their issues and their problems. If that's the case, if it's a case of that. So you imagine, let's say, a clear shield. You imagine a clear shield in front of you. If you want to imagine it this way, I like to make little visualizations or whatever, things like that. So you imagine a clear shield in between you and that person. So it's clear enough. You can see that person. You can see what they're going through. You can see them. You can hear what they're saying. You can interpret everything you can interpret if you did not have that shield. But the thing is, with that shield, you do not, it's a reminder that there's something between you and that person where you're not in their world to that extent. You understand what I'm saying? That clear shield is providing the protection for you, where you can see what they're going through, but you understand that you have your space behind this shield. So it's clear enough for you to see. You can talk, you can understand, you can, still have empathy, but you have that shield where you're not allowing it to get inside of you. You're not allowing it to become a part of you. But that's something that I've tried, and it does work. If you mentally put that blind there and understand that there is a difference between you and that person, that can help tremendously. There are other things you can do too, like it can be helpful to just step away sometimes. It's just helpful to step away. If something becomes a little bit too overwhelming and you can do that. Now, if you're an part of an emergency medical team, you can do that because that person's life depends on it, right? But what I'm saying is, if you're in a situation where you can just take a 5 minute, you can take a 5 and just go and drink a coffee or go outside or go out into the cool air or just get away, just take a step away and take a break. Sometimes you just need to do that. Oh yes, I'm sorry, I was speaking about emergency medical team, but we're speaking about personal relationships. But sorry, it took a while for me to get out of that mode, but sometimes it's just helpful to step away. So when something becomes too much or when it becomes too overwhelming or too tiring or too burdensome, sometimes we just need to take a break and leave. Or hang up the phone and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to call you back. Hang up the phone. You can hang up the phone. You can leave if you're visiting with someone and, you find that things are getting too intense or too crazy. Sometimes you can just leave. You can leave. You can say, all right, you know what, I think I've had enough. I'm going to go home. I'm going to sleep. I'm going to drink tea. I'm going to read my book. I still care, but we can talk tomorrow. I think I'm done for tonight. So that can make the difference, all the difference in the world, to just take a break, step away. Give yourself a limit to how much you deal with that thing. You know what I mean? And it's not so easy, especially with the ones that we love, family, friends, partners. It's not so easy. It's not. Because somehow we feel like we have to be all in, quote unquote, all in. And even if that means suffering with them, that's how we think that we're all in. Because that's how I've always felt. I always felt like if I care for someone, I have to take on their stuff, take on their burden, feel, everything, and feel how it feels to be in their shoes. And it's like I can't make a distinction between me and that person, and that's where I believe this self-sacrifice and codependency comes in. I couldn't make a distinction. But I've learned that it's okay. It's okay to empathize and be compassionate without over-identifying, and also just being able to take a break. I don't have to be there 16 hours a day. I can be there for 3. I can be there for 4. I don't have to stay on the phone for their whole story about what went wrong that day. I can stay on and listen to what it is that's really pertinent for them or what's really an issue for them, but I don't have to stay there and listen to them speak or wallow in whatever it is that's bothering them. I don't have to stick around for that. I don't have to, because it's not like I have to sit there and save them. I can be empathetic, but I don't have to, you know what I'm saying? I don't have to take on. So sometimes it's a matter of separating yourself mentally and emotionally, finding a way to separate and distinguish between you and them. And you can empathize without suffering. You don't have to suffer with them. You can be all in as a supportive person without suffering with them. So I hope you understand the distinction between that, because I didn't understand the distinction in the beginning. I couldn't understand it. I said, what does that mean? I thought I have to be all in. Yeah, but you don't have to take on. You don't have to take on. You don't have to exert and overexert and emotionally give all of yourself away. You don't have to do that, because it's going to burn you out, just like I said. All of this is about overextending your energy and not taking back enough or keeping some for yourself. You're giving it all away and you're not keeping any for yourself. So anyway, I'm saying that you're no good to them. Even people you need that actually need your help or want your support, you're no good to them if you've become fatigued or burnt out. No one wins in this scenario. Not you and not the other person. Nobody wins when you are emotionally fatigued, out of balance, and you're spent and worn out. Okay? The way that I feel like how we are the most effective and how we are the most helpful in this world is when we are replenished, when we are filled, when we are rested, and when we are balanced. That's when we can really help other people. But when we're spent and worn out, you're not helping anyone. The universe wants you to be relaxed and rested and okay, I don't know why we feel like we need to be spending all our energy, spending all our emotional self, and giving so much of ourself, doing so much, going overboard, and and we don't keep anything for ourselves, and we don't do anything for ourselves, and we don't replenish ourselves. It's not helpful. You're your best self when you are balanced and you're good and you're filled and you're your best self. You're your best self. Basically, that's what I'm saying. So hopefully this helped you in some way. Hopefully, and you found this useful. Okay, you found this useful. I don't know. I just decided to make this episode because I thought it would be a really interesting topic, and something that possibly it's not popular, but it's something that we need to remember, I think. So possibly if you're dealing with these issues, this can be somewhat of a help, or at least a light bulb for you, for something. So that's all I have for you today, guys. Thank you for listening to Woman's Guide to Reclaiming Wholeness After Sexual Abuse. If you like what you heard, please rate and review on iTunes. So next week we will explore another topic, and this is dealing with stress, delayed onset PTSD, and adrenaline fatigue. So be sure to tune in to that one. And until next time, take care.